Okay, so if you have followed along with the podcast at all the past couple months, you will have noticed that I had released this episode previously in June when Dirty Dough first opened their doors here in Vineyard, which is my hometown. Shout out Vineyard. But since then, there have been a lot of news going on. You may have heard of the Utah Cookie Wars, which is where there is one big cookie company who is suing a couple other smaller cookie companies, including Dirty Dough, for supposedly having the same business process and this. It's just confusing. I don't know. You can go and Google it and check it out yourself. But basically, they are trying to stifle any new competition, which I am not a big fan of because you can't trademark recipes, you can't trademark cookies, anything like that. And so I'm just a big believer of the free market. But Dirty Dough has handled the lawsuit with class and with a lot of humor too. And if you have seen their social media accounts, you may have come across some of their videos that they've been creating, which are just hilarious. So you should go check it out if you haven't. But because of that, that's why I wanted to re-release this episode now, because it is a very important time where we can go and make our voices heard by supporting all these other companies that we truly believe in, and especially Dirty Dough and another company called Crave Cookies, which we love as well, because again, cookies are not trademarkable and you can't copyright cookies or protect that because everyone makes them. So anyway, go and support those guys, and especially go and support Dirty Dough. I'm really excited to be able to share this episode with you because Bennett is an amazing guy who has had a lot of success in business before, but on top of that, he's also been able to create a lot of success with Dirty Dough. And surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, the lawsuit has actually helped them grow and sell about 40 more franchises since the lawsuit was announced with all of the publicity. So in a way, the lawsuit has actually helped them. But on top of being just an amazing business person and an incredible owner and entrepreneur, he's also just a genuine human who is really trying to help out everybody that he can. Their motto is, it's what's on the inside that counts. And I just love that because, as you guys know from me previously, mental health and taking care of yourself is extremely important. And I love that that's part of the mission at Dirty Dough. And you guys will hear about it more in this episode, but I just really appreciated Bennett taking his time to go over everything here. And I just wish him the best of luck because the lawsuit is ridiculous in my opinion. And I'm just really excited for you guys to go out and try Dirty Dough. So without further ado, here's this week's episode of Freedom to Fail.
Life is dirty and messy, and it's meant to be enjoyed, just like these cookies. We don't want it to look perfect because we want people to see more of the authentic life, and it's dirty and it's messy. The actual hospitalization rates and suicide rates have doubled since social media, over doubled. And the time I had a 2-year-old and a newborn daughter. What the hell do you do? Like, okay, now I'm aware, now what?
What is up, everyone? I'm Kyle, and I am the host and founder of the Freedom to Fail podcast and Fail Nation, a community where failing while pursuing our dreams is a positive and taking uncertain chances is celebrated. This podcast is for those who have a dream of starting a business or doing something they have always dreamed of, but have been held back by their fears. Our purpose is to share the unsuccessful stories of successful people so that you can learn how to take the first steps towards achieving your dreams. You deserve to live a life full of freedom and free of fear. Let's do this. Okay, what's up, Fail Nation? I am sitting here today with Bennett Maxwell. How are you doing?
Pretty good. How are you doing?
Good. So he is the owner of an awesome cookie company called Dirty Dough, which you may not have heard of them if you're living in Utah because they haven't quite opened up yet. You guys started in Arizona, is that right?
Yep.
Okay, so from what I remember you talking to me about it, you started in Arizona, but now you have like more than 50 locations sold that are getting ready to open up in the next couple of years. Is that right?
Yeah. So in Utah, if that's where the listener base is, we have Vineyard, Utah, Spanish Fork, Saratoga Springs, Pleasant Grove, and St. George opening next month.
Okay.
So crossing our fingers, right? It might be a few weeks late because, man, the construction delays. But yeah, we have 30 plus locations coming in Utah, 60 overall. Denver, Idaho, Las Vegas, a lot more in the Phoenix area. But it's 57 franchises and 3 mobile franchises. So they're buying a trailer and they're doing events. So it's for a total of 60. And probably have a few more, a dozen or so more in the next month or so.
Interesting. Okay. That's awesome. So my first big question for you is, I mean, we're here in Utah. Utah is the home of cookie companies. Like Crumble is based here, Chip is based here. There's plenty of others that I've tried that I just can't name off the top of my head right now. But even with all that competition, what made you decide that you guys wanted to come here to Utah? And what is the differentiator between you and all those other companies?
So we came to Utah because not so much because we think of the stores are going to kill it here. Now, Crumble's stores do really well, but outside of Utah, they tend to do a little bit better. So that's not the reason. So it's hands down the most saturated market. But on the flip side, you have the biggest customer base for cookies.
Yeah.
The reason I came here is one, this is where I'm from. So I just moved back from San Diego after doing my solar company. But it was to sell franchises and expand the business. So you look at Crumble, most of their franchises, even in Nashville or Georgia, South Carolina, Florida, I know people that own a lot of those in California as well. They're all Utah people. Right. So Utah, you just have such a good base. You have the colleges here, some decent U of U, BYU, UVU, all like right here within a 30, 45 minute drive of each other. A lot of college students, and it's very entrepreneur focused.
And a lot of sugar addicts.
Sugar addicts. So it's a decent market base. It is overly saturated, but the stores are still doing good because people in Utah eat more cookies than anywhere else. So
what is it about your cookies that is different than the other people?
So this company it was already formed when I jumped in. I was an investor to take the company from a delivery only in an apartment. I gave them some money to open up a retail, which opened in March of 2020, the week of COVID in Tempe, Arizona.
Yeah, and we were talking about that because I was actually down there for spring trading for all that stuff. So right in the similar area, right at the exact same time too.
Yep. So we opened then. Other than giving some money out, I didn't do anything. I didn't even know when the store was open. I didn't know absolutely nothing. Anyways, and then I wanted to franchise it. I wanted to be the franchisee. And I was living in San Diego, and I'm like, it's going to kill it out here. And I know that because I just went to Crumble, and they had a line out the door around the corner, so let's do this. And long story short, he ended up not wanting to franchise and said he was burnt out, wanted to sell the business. So I was like, if I'm already going to buy a franchise, let's test my luck. So I bought the company, and the first thing is like, okay, how are we different than Crumble? So I bought the company in January of 2021. How are we different than Crumble? And I heard an employee say, dirty dough means the dough's dirty. And I'm like, what do you mean? Oh, well, like the mix-ins and all that. And I'm like, oh, we're going with that. So whoever that employee was, thank you. It was just on one of my trips. So it's like, okay, well, dirty dough, we are focused on the inside of the cookie now. We're going to do more fillings, more mix-ins, and we're doing these 2-layer and 3-layer cookies. So what that means, you can look at a cookie and it looks like a normal peanut butter cookie. Then you break it open, you have a chocolate dough in the middle, and in the very center you have Reese's peanut butter coming out. So those cookies don't exist right now. And that's what we're going. Kind of the opposite of, Crumble is the clean, preppy. It's all about the appearance. And we wanted the dirty, fun look. And then I know I'm kind of getting into everything all at once.
I love it.
But it also gave off the message that I wanted to, and that I've been very focused on, like mental health, and not even so much very focused on it, but like very worried about it. And this was like, I'm like, man, this is perfect. Like what's on the inside matters most. That's what our cookies are. Like that's what we're doing. We're focusing on the inside. So we just changed our tagline. We just rebranded. Now it's proudly unique inside and out. And we're really pushing that hard of life is dirty and messy, and it's meant to be enjoyed, just like these cookies. And it just was a perfect segue to like form this nonprofit that we're in the middle of all of the mental health focus, trying to take away and break down the wall of, you live an imperfect life, right? A normal imperfect life. And then you compare yourself to somebody else's Instagram life that appears to be perfect. And then you're like, crap, well, I didn't go to, I'm not where they're at. And that's what we want to combat. We don't want it to look perfect because we want people to see more of the authentic life, and it's dirty and it's messy. So anyways, it kind of all fit in really well with the name, and then the dirty dough means the dough's dirty, and then the multi-layers, and then the mental health, push is what we're doing. So everything that we're doing, and we can get into that a little bit later, is mental health focused and education based to basically K through 12 age students.
That is amazing. And honestly, that is exactly why I started this podcast. I'm not lying. Like, cool. I started this right after my divorce a couple of years ago because I just felt like I wasn't achieving anything because I would look on Instagram and it looked like everyone had it together. So I started it for the exact same reason, where I was just like, why is Instagram only a highlight reel? Like, yeah, these people are having success, but they also go through a ton of crap along the way that nobody knows about. And so that's why I started it, because I was like, I want to learn about the crap that they're going through to be able to find success so that I can do it too. So very similar beginnings with that. That's way cool.
I mean, it causes so much harm mentally. And I started following this because Jonathan Haidt had a podcast on Joe Rogan. 3.5 years ago. I don't know. I was listening to it, and it's the mental health, all about the mental health crisis, and the actual hospitalization rates and suicide rates have doubled since social media, over doubled. Yeah. And at the time I had a 2-year-old and a newborn daughter. So what the hell do you do? Like, okay, now I'm aware. Now what, So, and that's when I started focusing on it more, but not having an answer. And now I feel like I can maybe make a dent in it.
Okay. So that's where the whole focus for like the mental health part of it started, was like that podcast from 3.5 years ago or whatever. Yep. Okay.
It started with that. Then it rolled into a close family member, 12, had a kid, 12 years old, had a suicide attempt. And that's 6th grade. That's elementary school. Blew me away. I didn't know I couldn't tell you what suicide was in 6th grade. Yeah. And she wasn't the first or the second. It was the third one that year. And then here in Utah, just earlier this year, there was another suicide that was attributed to bullying. But same thing. It's like, man, like this is a different world. So that happened. That shook me. And again, it's like, hey, got 2 daughters. What do I do? And now I have a son as well. But I guess guys aren't as affected by it, but it still greatly affects them. So, and then the next kind of thing was my daughter started watching YouTube at age 4, and good, clean content, a dad playing with his daughter, good content. But she starts coming to me, hey, daddy, I want this. I want that. I want to go here. I want to go there. At 4 years old, she's wanting what this other YouTuber wants and comparing herself to the YouTuber, right? And I'm like, you're 4. But I know she's looking at this thinking, because it's like a kind of a video vlog, right? So it's like, it's very easy to think like that's the real life. Well, it's not the real life, right? She's never seen that little girl cry. Yeah. She's never seen a little girl fight with her brother. The little girl never goes to timeout on camera. So it's like, my parents are rude because of this. I mean, my daughter's never said that, but I'm like, if she's drawing the conclusions of she has this and I want it, and I'm going to use that as justification to sell my dad on buying it. Like, well, she has it. Well, she went there. Then she's got to be doing that with everything. Oh, well, Adley's little brother. That's the name of the show. Mm-hmm. And it's a great show. It's as clean as content as you can find. Yeah. She's like, Adley never fights with her brother. It's like, well, no, it's just not on camera per se. Yeah. So anyways, that's kind of, and I'm like, man, at 4 years old, I'm already starting with this. So that kind of scared me. The third scare, then I'm like, all right, what do I do?
So what is the mental health side that you guys are like focusing on? Or because you said you were working on starting a nonprofit or something, right? So what is your focus and what is it that you would like to achieve through all of that?
So kind of the big vision of the company is we franchised in December. So in under 6 months, we've sold 60 stores. Well, if you can sell 60 stores in under 6 months, it's a stretch, right? Anything's a stretch for a startup, but it's not that much of a stretch, I guess, to have 1,000 stores. So at 1,000 stores, what kind of impact can we make? And the first, I kind of see myself having 3 customers. I have my franchisees that I can potentially change their lives. I have my employees and their employees, people who are working in these stores. And then I have just the end consumer, the general public. Yeah. So the first one isn't really mental health focus. It's just the business model, lowering the barrier of entry to provide a lower costing franchise that's much easier to run than anything else out there. So more people jump into business and provide, passive income. And it's something that was built to be kind of like the Mrs. Fields model, be around for 40 years so you can pass that down. Anyways, the mental health focus comes in at who works in a cookie company? 16 to 20-year-old girls.
Yeah.
How do you have a better opportunity to change lives than, hey, who works in my cookie company, right? Like those are the people that are most affected. And so that's really what I wanted to be like, no, this is a great opportunity. So I found this program. It's basically like an add-on to benefits. Anyways, at a corporate level, we're paying this for all of our franchisees. All of our employees and the employees of our franchisees. So at 1,000 stores, we're going to have 20,000 employees. So hopefully we have 20,000 people on this program that we fund at a corporate level. And it's all about matching them up with a life coach in various aspects. So of course there's like, do you have anxiety or depression? But it's also financial stress, reaching peak performance, mindfulness, getting into guided meditation, being a minority, going through a divorce. Like there's 50 things and there's not a human alive that's going to look at this list and say, I don't need any of that. Eating healthy, exercising, getting better sleep, like just such a wide variety of things. And it matches them with a coach who had the similar challenge and was able to overcome it. Unlimited calls per month. So I'm like, this is cool. I think I can help a lot of people here. And then the end consumer, I started talking about, one is just the messaging and getting out there. Like we just threw up some billboards here on I-15 if you've seen that. One of them is in touch with our feelings, like inside the cookie, but also feelings, and just like pushing that out there and being more of that, kind of come as you are, be authentic. And then what we're doing financially is this nonprofit that we're creating. We're calling schools and saying, hey, have you heard of a wellness room? And most schools have. This is something I'm still learning.
What is that?
A wellness room is an old room, just a classroom that they're going to convert into like a mental health focus. So the point of it is you enter in here, you don't feel like you're in school anymore. You grab a little timer, you're supposed to be in there like 10, 15 minutes max. And I want my focus to be on education of mental health. So I don't want to necessarily provide a safe space for people, because safe space is temporary. What I want to do is teach them how to be mentally healthy, right? Yeah. So they come in, they can talk with the coach there or whoever's running that room, or they can grab a tablet and it's guided meditation, breathing exercises, mindfulness techniques. And they can start actually learning things that, probably you and I never would have learned in high school, for sure not in junior high, for sure not in elementary. I'm trying to change that stigma that I grew up with. If you see a therapist, it's because you're weak-minded.
That's
right?
Exactly what I thought.
You have anxiety? Well, just think happy thoughts. You have depression? Think happy thoughts.
You can choose how you feel.
Exactly. And it's terrible. and I still haven't, I can't relate to a lot of those mental illnesses, but I know they're real. I've seen the science on them, and people are killing themselves over it. Yeah. So me coming from I was the worst viewing it, no, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and, think about rainbows and unicorns and you'll be fine. So really trying to, everybody will tell you to go to the gym every week to be physically healthy. Why isn't anybody saying you should see a therapist every week? Everybody should. Yeah. You don't need depression. You don't need anxiety. You should be doing meditation every week or every day. But there's just that stigmatism against it. Just mental health. Nah, mental health is if you're going to kill yourself. And it's no, there's so much more to that. Let's attack it in the early stages, right? Yes. When you're stressed, let's teach you to deal with stress so it doesn't turn into anxiety and then depression, then self-harm, then suicide.
And that is such an important thing because, like you said, it touches everybody. But the problem is nobody talks about it, and it's just this taboo subject. I don't know. I don't know why it's just as difficult to talk about mental health as it is to have a blunt conversation about sex or about all these other types of things.
It's weird.
It's really weird. And so I love that. I'm a big believer, big user of therapy and stuff like that. I think it's extremely important. There have been definitely periods in my life where I've been way more depressed. And then there have been periods of my life where I've felt good, but all throughout it, the consistency has been that I have been seeing a therapist. Even when I'm good, you still need to see a therapist. The problem, this is a little bit of a side note, but it's something that I found fascinating in my health economics class when I was in college. One thing that I learned is that other countries have a lot longer life expectancies, obviously. And the reason there's a lot that goes into it. Right. I'm no doctor, but one of the things that we studied that went along with that is because in other countries, what they do is they focus on the source of the problem and they don't focus on the treatment of the problem. Whereas here, we only go to the doctor when we're sick. Yeah. We only go to the hospital when we break a leg. We aren't focused on doing these other visits to make sure that our bodies are running at optimal strength. And so I think it's the same with therapy. If we let it get to that point where we are just nose diving deep into depression, it's going to be really hard to pull up and to be able to survive with that. I'm the exact same as you. Until I went through my divorce and felt that depression, I legitimately didn't think it was real. I thought it was just something that you controlled. And then I went through that and I was just wow, this is absolutely horrible. And then I passed that period of time of grieving for my divorce and stuff. I got all over it, but I was still feeling these intense moments of depression, which was crazy to me because I was well, now I have nothing bad in my life. Why am I still feeling all this? And so, I just 100% agree. I'm very passionate about that too. Everyone should get a therapist to prevent the mental health problems and work on any of the ones that are already there under the surface that we may not know about.
Yeah. We get it with physical health, right? You're taught that in school. You go to elementary, you're taught about you need to exercise, go to recess, junior high, and then high school, but nobody's talking about mental health. Nobody's saying this is how, because it's well, who cares if you're physically healthy, if you're not happy? Why are we here? Yeah. Anyways, my personal belief is we want to lead fulfilled, happy lives. Tell me what's more important, going to the gym or seeing a therapist to achieve that goal, right? But nobody sees a therapist. Yeah. And it's not even it has to be a therapist, but
even a life coach or even just someone to confide in.
Yeah. It's just not talked about. And I'm fighting against this because this is all new to me. I started seeing a therapist about a year ago when I sold my solar company and I was really happy. A week later, I'm I'm just back to my normal level of happiness. What am I really going for? Yeah. So then I kind of dove a little bit deeper and still experiencing that journey. But the other day, maybe 2 weeks ago, I'm my therapist told me to do, have scheduled nightly dinners because I was telling him, after work, he's are you really done with work? Because I'm proud of myself. I end work at 5 and it's family time. But he's are you still thinking about work sometimes? Are you still present? One of the things you should try is family dinner, 6 o'clock, no matter what. So I'm cool, let's do it. And I've been doing it for a few months. And then I go to post on it and I'm like, my therapist told me, stop, delete. Somebody told me. And I'm like, what? Why am I doing that? Like, that's exactly what I'm against. So then I delete it again and I go back to my therapist told me. But I'm like, I felt shame in saying that I have a therapist, you know? So, and that was just a month ago, so a few weeks ago. So definitely it's, I'm dealing with it, you know, just trying to change that stigma of like, man, if you're here to, have a lot of money, then whatever, right? But if you're here to be fulfilled, live a fulfilled life and happy, mental health is the key, right? So,
and I think that's so cool that that's your focus, because you said this isn't something that you really have struggled with a ton, but yet you've still allowed yourself to acknowledge the fact that it is something that other people deal with quite a bit. That could be a whole other conversation of stuff in the country or just in the world in general. But I think I respect that so much and I really admire that for you. So I love that.
Thank you.
I'm curious. I want to jump back a little bit into the business side of things there. So you now run a cookie company, but you got to this point of being able to buy it by having a solar company, right?
Yes.
So obviously you had to be able to find some level of success to be able to get to that point where you had the financial wherewithal to be able to invest and purchase this company. So let's talk a little bit about just your work, your business career all the way up until this point, but specifically from the eye of failure. So obviously, I don't know how long ago was it that you started your solar company, that you did that?
It was actually pretty short lived. I started it in January of 2020.
Oh, wow.
And then I bought the company, the Dirty Dough, in January of 2021. So it was just a year after.
Cow.
And then I exited the solar company about 6 months after. So I only owned it for about 18 months.
Okay.
And the two companies did overlap there for about 6 months.
So is the solar company still running? Like, did you have partners that were doing it? And
it was me and my brother, and we sold it to basically everything was combined with a larger solar company.
Awesome. So in that journey of starting that solar company and then getting it to the point where you could then sell it and have this money and stuff, what would you say is the most difficult experience that you had in that journey?
I mean, we're in Utah and everybody knows what summer sales is. A lot of people have tried it. I really excelled at it, not because I liked it, not because I'm an extrovert or a natural born salesman, but because I just I just grinded.
Yeah.
I was trying to calculate the other day, like how many doors have I probably knocked on in, 5-6 years? And it was like well over 30,000, probably 40,000. How many of those people answered? Most of them answer. How many people of those tell you no? Most of them tell you no. So I've gotten like 30,000 no's, so that's not easy. The way I was very education focused to try to get me away from the production focused, because it's like, if you don't sell anything today, that's hard mentally.
Yeah.
Most people fail at summer sales or door knocking, not because it's hard, because it's like, can you knock on somebody's door and talk to them? And well, anybody can do that. Like physically, it's not hard, but mentally, and anybody can knock on a door if somebody's ready to buy. And with zero sales experience, if somebody's waiting for pest control and you knock on their door, you're going to feel good after that.
Yeah.
But how are you going to feel when they tell you no? When they tell you to F off, right? When they tell you the 10th guy on the door that day. And that's allowed me to build up kind of a shield against, like, I don't care that much about no's. I still care way too much what people think about me. And that's something I'm working on. But that's also helped in that progression. So just knocking doors every single day and getting 100 no's every single day, I'd say that's mentally been the hardest thing I've done.
Yeah. How many days did you have where you basically just said, I can't knock any more doors, I'm mentally checked out?
All the time. I'm going to go home. Like, I'm done.
Okay.
I've already made enough money, all the time. And not even like take hiatuses. I'm like, until you guys fix your installations, I'm not selling another security account. Like, just being a little baby, an entitled salesperson. Because I was like, I just want to break as well. And I'm going to blame it on somebody else because I don't want to accept the responsibility for it.
Interesting. Yeah. No, I love that focus on accountability with that. So what did you do then to get past those times of wanting to quit, those days where you're like, I'm not going to do it anymore, and instead instill in yourself the work ethic needed to be able to keep pushing forward in the face of failure?
Yeah. I changed my goal. So my goal wasn't, I had sales goals, but so kind of I started in 2015, sold pest for 2 months because I got recruited halfway through the summer. Next summer, 2016, sold a full summer of pest, recruited a team of 40 dudes, and all first years. I was still first year. Anyways, that was through a different company though.
Yeah.
Then I switched industries and I went and sold satellite. Then I switched industries and companies and I went and sold Vivint alarms. And I did that for 2 years. And then I went and switched industries again. And it's like, well, if I sell Vivint alarms, I've done it for 2 years and I could go sell a few hundred accounts and make a few $100,000 easy. Why would I risk that to go sell solar? Why am I making these shifts? Because they're all well thought out. I know I probably would have made more money if I just stuck with that first pest control company and built a team. But I was focused on learning. So if you're with a company for 5 years in the first 6 months, you're probably going to learn 80% of what you're going to learn the entire 5 years. So learn what you're going to learn, then jump into another company, another industry. And that was my mentality from Rich Dad, Poor Dad, work to learn, not to earn. And when you do that, it's crap. I didn't have a good day today. I didn't make any money, or I made very little money. I learned how to overcome more objections. I learned how to be more resilient today. Yeah. And it's all about bettering myself and not focusing on the financial goal. And then the finance, I mean, I've been lucky enough that it follows. But when I did that first summer in pest control, I was in Baltimore installing security systems.
Okay.
And my buddy called me, and the next day after this first phone call, I've never even heard about like any of this. And he's like, yeah, I mean, he sold me. I didn't know about like summer sales. If you have a Pulse, you're allowed to show up. He's like, yeah, I think I can make a space for you. I was like, dude, if you can make a space for me, I'm there tomorrow. He's like, you're going to drive from Baltimore to California? I'm there, man. If you can make a space for me. He's like, let me see. So anyways, I did. I literally drove the next day, and I thought, I'm leaving, money that I don't have to sell. I'm at least getting paid.
Yeah.
Complete risk. I'm going to drive across the country, and I could make no money. But as long as I could learn to be a better communicator, then it'll be worth it. So that's always been my focus, is not focusing on the financial gain, but focusing on personal development. And then because you can always get better every day. You can't always make a sale though.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think that's super true. And I just love the fact that you're focusing on what you can control, because there's a lot of external factors, and in a lot of sales companies, I mean, obviously you have to be selling, otherwise you're not doing your job, and like the company is not going to be able to afford to pay you. But there are a lot of other decision makers that you don't control, like on the other side of the fence. And so being able to just focus on what you can do, which I love that for you, it was focus on, I'm just going to put in the work, do what I can, and then learn, have a little bit of like an external why. I mean, I think that's super important too. Like Simon Sinek, that's one of my favorite books, Start With Why. And it's just like, you have to have a solid reason to be able to be doing something extremely difficult like that, to be able to work through it.
And most people's why isn't strong enough because they don't think it through. So the why is money.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's like, well, money doesn't give you anything.
Yep.
If you tell me my why is to make $200,000 to buy 2 investment properties, to turn those into rental properties, so 30 years they're paid off, and then I'm cash flowing $8,000 a month between the 2 properties.
Yeah.
And I could retire off of that. That's a why, right? So yeah, that's money, but you have to keep going.
It's not just, I want a Maserati.
Yeah, people stop at the money and they don't dig deeper, and then it's just weak.
Cool. Yeah, that's very, very insightful for sure.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the cookies now a little bit. You are basically a brand new company because you bought it even though they had already existed for like a year or so. But then COVID happened and they were dealing with all of COVID and all that crap too. And now you're basically having a brand new model, having to design how franchisees are going to work, doing all that kind of stuff. So it has been probably a wild ride in the past year and a half or so.
Yes.
What would you say has been the biggest self-created mistake or miscalculation that you guys have made along the way?
It was my very first one.
Okay.
I guess my very second one. My first decision was I'm going to buy this cookie company. My second decision was I'm running a solar company. I have a decent amount of free time, but it's not my full-time gig. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to partner with other part-timers, and I'm going to bring on, there were 6 of us, and we're all going to be part-time in the cookie company.
Okay.
So this was, I own like 55%, so I maintained majority ownership, and then I brought on other people. And that was the biggest mistake because part-time in business doesn't work.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. So that was kind of the biggest mistake. I loved all the partners that I brought on. They're all great. It's just everybody's focus was split, including mine. Then when I sold my solar company, I'm like, I'm into this 100%. Then I started taking, I took a startup course here in Utah and took on a senior advisor that's very, very experienced here in Utah. Probably most people know him, John Richards. And he's like, part-timers don't work. I was like, well, no. You don't know me. And he's like, I've done this 1,000 times. Part-timers don't work. No, but I'm the exception. Anyways. After a month, I apologized to him and started listening. So I would say that was the biggest thing. That was the biggest headache of like, well, you're not putting enough work. No, you're not putting enough work. Well, I'm putting in the money. Well, you're not putting in enough, and like, even though it was coming together, man, we were burning through a lot of money. Yeah. So a lot of money spinning our wheels, didn't know the direction, too many kind of hands in the pot, hands on the steering wheel, I guess. And that we would have grown a lot quicker and a lot faster if I didn't bring in a bunch of part-timers, but instead brought in 1 or 2 good partners and myself did it full time.
Okay. When did you get to the point where you realized that was a mistake? And then
September.
Okay.
So 9 months. I didn't know that was the mistake. I just knew that things weren't going how I envisioned them going. It wasn't until September I took Startup Ignition in Lehigh, wherever they do it. That one was in Lehigh. And then I learned that was my error. I was like, wait a second. So you're telling me that most of these problems are because of this? And I kind of started analyzing it. I'm like, that would make sense. Like, that's why there's bad communication. That's why things take longer. That's why things aren't getting, we're progressing. It's like everybody's part-time, like, duh. And then it took me about a month to kind of finalize everything. And by November 1st, all agreements have been finalized. I bought everybody else out.
Okay.
And it was just me for about a month. And then I brought on a partner.
That's okay. Yep. See, that's like, some people would look at that and be like, well, that's an entire year wasted pretty much. But instead, what happened is that you learned exactly what not to do when running it in the future, which,
oh, for sure.
Especially like at that point, at that scale, I'm sure it was manageable and doable. But if you had gotten to the point where you like bought a company that had like 40 or 50 locations already and you were part-time and everyone else was part-time, you would have just started drowning super quickly. So,
And what we did is we lost a lot of money. I mean, probably, at least 6 figures, but of just spinning our wheels, not knowing what we're doing.
Yeah. Oh man. The joys of failure, right?
Yeah.
They're so great.
The joys of failure.
So what would you say along this journey of the past year? I guess we're almost a year and a half since you jumped in with this. What are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned in this journey?
So just general business knowledge and legal work, investing, making sure everybody's on a vesting agreement, things like that. Apart from that, I would say, who did I just talk with this morning? Nathan Bird. Anyways, he has a podcast as well. And he owns an art gallery in Salt Lake. Okay. Super cool spot. Anyways, it's finding the who, not the how. So it's like, you can find how to do it, or you can find who's going to do it. And I mean, you just met Jill, our CEO. So that's just kind of all those changes. I bought everybody out in November. She came on at the end of November. And I've never been in food. I bought the company, never been in food, right?
Yeah.
So I can figure it out. With enough time, anybody can figure out anything. But I can also shortcut a lot of this and hire somebody who's been in food and franchising for 40 years. She founded a company in the 80s, took it to almost 700 locations and sold it. So like, that's a brand that was built to last. There's franchisees that have renewed 10-year contracts and then another 10 years and then another 10 years. That's what I wanted to build. So I'm like, let me just find somebody who's already done it. So she did that. Then she went with another company, took them from 0 to 80 or 90 in a few years. And I'm like, well, this is perfect. So I'm learning from her as this goes, but I didn't need to learn it all now.
Okay.
And then I've done that. Like, we're sitting in our cookie warehouse here in Springville. My buddy did everything in here. Like, I didn't ever even look at the plans. I could take the time to learn it, or I can do other things and work on my business rather than in it. So I hired somebody that worked for American Crafts 2.5 years ago. They didn't sell any food products. They wanted to get into food crafts. They hired him. Last year, they did $70 million in just food alone under his program. And I mean, he hired everybody, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, if he runs 260,000 square feet of warehouse space with, thousands of products, he can probably handle 50 to 100 recipes and 10,000 square feet, right? Yeah. So it's finding the who rather than the how.
So how'd you go about doing that? Because obviously people make businesses successful. So it sounds like you found a good connection there. And then also with the CEO, how did you know where to look for that? Because obviously, like you mentioned, you had zero experience whatsoever. And a lot of times, I don't know if I'm necessarily a believer of this kind of mindset, but there's a lot of like startups like Y Combinator or other things like that won't even let you apply with your startup unless you have a founder, because they say it's super difficult to do it all by yourself and you'll just drown in all that. So I agree to that to a certain extent there. But how do you find the right partner?
You just talk with everybody. If you tell 100 people what you're doing, that's potentially 1,000 people that can help you. So everybody I talk to, I talk about what I'm doing. Yeah. And that's not natural for me. I made that change maybe a year, 2 years ago. I'm at the grocery store. I got my headphones and I'm not going to talk to you. I'm at the barber getting my hair cut, and I tell him as soon as we start, hey, I'm going to listen to music. Yeah. I don't want to talk to you. Uber drivers, I don't talk with them. I feel more comfortable just sitting in silence. Yeah. I read a report, and anyways, as far as, I'm getting into more of this happiness, and it's been proven time and time again, the more you talk with other people, the more human connections and interactions you have, the happier you are. So I made that change, and that's helped me a lot. I didn't make it for business. Yeah. I made it for my personal happiness levels to increase that. Because generally speaking, I don't care a ton about somebody's personal life. People will shadow me sell, and they're like, dude, how'd you do that? Why didn't you ask them about their kids? I was like, I don't care about their kids. I'm not going to, I'm going to follow up with this person. I'm going to build a professional relationship. Yeah. Now, this doesn't work for everybody. This is my personality. Like, I don't talk about my kids, my family. I don't ask them about their dog. I don't look at pictures. I don't make personal connections. I just get in there. I explain it. I'm 100% logic based when it comes to selling. And it's just like, if the numbers make sense, you're going to tell me yes. If it's no, then frankly, I'm not going to ask you. But that's just how it is. So that's my background. I'm not that person, but I'm turning into that person. And it is making it is a big difference. I am just having these stupid, shoot in the breeze with random people I would never talk to before. Just getting and like trying to be interested because I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Well, I'm starting to care now. And I didn't think that I was like, it's just in me. Like, I don't care. Like, I'm not interested unless like we can mutually gain from this, but just to chat, like, I don't want to do that. And now that I'm doing it, I'm finding that I do care and it's fun to know about people's life. And just kind of listen to them. And I think people need that. Like, I love to be listened to. I think other people do too. So I don't know. I've been working on that a lot.
Cool.
And then when you do that with business, if you're walking and you have a podcast and you tell everybody, if you tell 100 people a day that you do a podcast, you're going to have unlimited guests and then they're going to connect you with some all-star guests who's going to connect you with other all-star guests. But it's just networking.
100%.
Kind of getting out of the shell.
Cool. Yeah, I love that. So I want to wrap up this little section with some of my favorite questions, just my lightning round. The first one is, what would you say is your biggest fear?
My biggest fear, probably letting down people. Like that's what I struggle with the most. Like I always want to undersell something because I hate when somebody comes back and like, you told me this, and I'm like, especially in the sales world, like that happens all the time. There's a lot of people out there. So personally, I fear not being liked by other people, not being accepted. Way too much. So like a lot, like any stress and anxiety, it's always this artificial of, man, if this happens and this happens and that person won't like me, then I'll lose my reputation. This person, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's like, I always go down that path and that's what drives me to, it definitely drives some success, but at the expense of super high stress and anxiety getting there, and it's not worth it. So that's what I've been working on, but that's I would say that's my biggest fear.
Yeah. I relate to that 100%. Yep.
Coming from a door-to-door salesperson that's telling you that he's immune to rejection, I'm not. I've gotten a lot better than it, but business rejection and personal rejection are very different. I'm still very fearful of that personal rejection.
Awesome. Yeah. I can relate to that. And yep, it is extremely difficult to crack. The next one is going along the same lines of like failure, rejection, all that kind of stuff. So what would you say is your personal definition of failure?
I would probably relate it. I guess I need to reevaluate it, but I'm going to tell you what I initially thought. And it's letting other people down, right? Telling them something and then not completing with that. Like I would feel terrible if in that first summer that I did, I recruited 40 dudes and a lot of these guys didn't make much money.
Yeah.
They still made more money than they ever had, but I looked at that as a failure because I wanted them to have the success that I was having.
Yeah. No, I like that. It's an answer that I haven't gotten before, but I can 100% see the train of thought behind it.
I think now if I had, now that I have a little bit more time to think, like I would say failure is trying something and then giving up. There's a time to pivot, I should say, and you can give up on an idea to replace another one, but don't just like give
Stop
up.
trying.
So I think that's more of where I'm going, but kind of my first initial response because of who I've been in the past, I would say that's kind of what it is. Like you're telling somebody you're going to do it and you're not fulfilling that.
Cool. Yeah. The next one is, I'm a big believer in habits. I think habits are extremely important to be able to set up yourself for success in just personal life and then also just like with business too. Mm-hmm. So what's one habit that you have that has helped you find success?
Habit for success, definitely being like a forever student. So I dropped out of college, but I've never stopped learning, and I learned more than I definitely was in college. But I gave up music for several years. So I'm like, music, well, how's that going to help me? Efficiency. I'm efficient. Well, now I'm kind of going back and I'm like, no, I need to enjoy life a little bit more. But I gave it up and I listened to every freaking sales book and I role played to myself. I wrote down everything. I'd look myself in the mirror, do all of that. But it was having the mentality of what is that person doing that I can't learn, and then learning and then putting the time and the dedication to learn. But if you are driving for 30 minutes a day and you listen to a podcast at 1.5 speed, because that's what I do.
Yep, same.
You go through podcasts or books quick. You gain a lot of knowledge and a lot of applicable knowledge. Or you can, drive to work, listen to music and enjoy it a little bit more. I didn't do that for years, like literally no music for years. And I think that was the habit that excelled my learning the most, which then excelled my success.
Cool. Yeah. That's one thing that I try and do whenever I'm in the gym. What I do, I listen to music when I'm in the car and stuff like that. But when I go to the gym or other places like that, one of my favorite things to do is that's where I listen to all my podcasts, which is weird because everyone else is listening to like this hard rap or rock and stuff to get pumped up. But for me, listening to podcasts or audiobooks in the gym is my place for it. So I love it.
It's a good habit.
For sure.
It's a good habit because now you're focusing on learning and
and physical
you did
growth
physical at the same time. It's efficient, and I love that.
So that actually goes into my last question of the lightning round, which is, we were talking about audiobooks, all that kind of stuff. I'm a big reader. I think reading is so important for being able to grow and learn and stuff. What would you say has been the book that has impacted you the most?
In business is The E-Myth.
Okay.
For
Love
sure.
that one. Love it.
When you say books, I mean audiobooks. I need to get to reading though, because I know the studies show that's way better for you. I'm just dumb and I'm a slow reader.
Hey, audiobooks are still right up there. So
I would say The E-Myth has been the biggest for business. Just general mindset of like when I changed my gears of like, who do I want to be? What do I want to become? It was kind of my first book that I listened to after my mission, which was Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Okay.
And the two things I got from that is one, just the investing in real estate, which I've done. I've just closed on my 7th property this week. And the other thing is the little phrase I just use, work to learn, not to earn.
Yeah.
Those are the two little nuggets that have changed kind of everything of like, and I wouldn't even say just real estate. To dive a little bit deeper, it's don't trade your time for money, trade your money for more money.
Yeah.
And then that's an investment mindset. I'd never even heard of that before that.
That's awesome.
So that kind of started me on that personal trajectory. And then business, though, The E-Myth, for sure.
Those are both great books. I want to add one that I'm actually currently reading right now, just because we were talking about rejection and like door knocking and all that stuff. When I sold Pest Control, one of my goals was to hit a certain amount of doors and just see how many no's I got with all that. Because that was my how I told myself I was going to build up resiliency, was just like focus on the total number of doors, not necessarily the results or anything like that. So anyway, during that time, I found this TED Talk by this guy named Jia Zhang. He's from Shanghai, I think, Beijing. He's from Beijing.
Okay.
Came here as a foreign exchange student in high school. Then, surprisingly, I didn't even make this connection at all, but he actually went to the University of Utah and BYU, which is just randomly, just because that's where the sponsors worked out for him. He went out this one time, just over the course of 100 days, I think it was, and he challenged himself to do something that would most likely get him a rejection every single day for 100 days. And so like, I started it, and the TED Talk's amazing. You guys should all go check it out. But also in the book, like the very first thing was his hook to get listeners in was he showed up to a random dude's house wearing soccer cleats and shin guards with a ball, and just like rang his doorbell and was like, "Hey, would you mind if I played soccer in your backyard for a little bit?" Just like ridiculous requests that like get no's pretty consistently, just so he can get like, I don't know, I guess trained to be okay with rejection.
Have you heard of the 5-hour or the 4-hour work week?
Yeah.
It's like 5 hours.
Tim Ferriss?
Yeah, so Tim Ferriss, that was another really good book early on that I read when I was in college, and then I started subbing out my papers to people in India. It works, guys. You can get a B. He talks about one of the activities that he tells you to do is you just go lay on the floor of a public place, and you just lay there. And everybody's going to look at you, and you're supposed to feel awkward, but you're supposed to realize that it's not that bad, right?
Yeah.
So that was like, and then another one is you look somebody in the eye, you like just eye contact with random people. And then he even says like, if it's a guy, a lot of times they're going to be like, "Well, the F you looking at you," right? Yeah. And then you say, and so he's like, so if they do that, you can just say, "Oh, sorry, I thought I recognized you," right? Yeah. I thought I knew you first. But it's like, I literally just did this like a week ago. I'm like, I'm just going to stare into people's eyes as I walk by them and make sure that it's freaking awkward. I'm like, they have to break eye contact first. It's awkward. But he talked about that, and that was a great book as well.
Yeah, that's a good one. So the book that Jia Zhang wrote is called Rejection Proof, and I can't remember what his TED Talk's called, but anyway, I'll post a link of both of those. But yeah, that is awesome. And I mean, we're talking about failure. You got to get through the no's to be able to find the yeses. So yeah,
with the failure, another piece from that book, the Tim Ferriss book, is going to the what's the worst that can happen, because you play these scenarios in your mind that are worse than the worst thing that can happen.
100%.
It's crazy. You're like, what do you mean I'm worse than the worst that can happen? It's like, no, like sit down and like, what if you came out and did a summer of sales? Like, what's the worst that can happen?
Have you seen his TED Talk called Fear Setting?
No, I haven't.
I think it's probably a similar idea, but basically he says, plan for the worst. And he just says like, go through all the worst case scenarios. And then if the worst case scenario happens, then have a plan of what you're going to do after that.
Yeah. And then you can take risks, because his example was, I had a business and I just wanted a break. I thought if I left and I turned off my phone, then the business would fail. And he's like, and then it started succeeding. And I realized that was the bottleneck. But the thing is, it's like, well, what if it does fail? And I've gone through this 1,000 times in the last year because of Dirty Dough. Yeah. Man, it's been stressful. Well, what if it fails? Man, I mean, I just get this, like I was losing sleep because I was wasting so much money, What if it fails? And then I'm like, well, if it fails, I own my cars. I have several rental properties. I have $300,000 of credit cards with zero balances. Like, it's actually not that bad. Like, I could pay off all the debt and I'm not going to go bankrupt. And even if I did go bankrupt, like, that's still not that bad. I had a brother that went through that. And that's also helped me too. Cause like, just so you know, like, it's like you still live on, right? So the worst that can happen is never as bad as we initially think. And that's really big in like taking the risk. What's the worst? Well, worst that can happen is I'm probably going to have to go, live in the basement of my parents' house. Maybe. I don't know. If you have parents with a basement, I don't, but.
No, that's a great thought to end on. I definitely love that. Just focus on the positive things for sure with that, like what the best case scenario is, but also don't discount the worst case scenario. And as humans, we tend to avoid thinking about bad situations or bad thoughts, but just embrace it and then plan for it. And then you'll be able to find more success than you ever have before. So I just want to say thank you for joining us on this section, just with the Freedom to Fail podcast. I'm super excited to go into the year one section, just kind of how you would recreate your business from scratch, just from one location. But for all of our listeners out there who want to learn more about you and then also about Dirty Dough and where they can find it all, how can they connect with you and with Dirty Dough?
BennettMaxwell.com. So BennettMaxwell.com. So there you can inquire about franchising, because I truly do believe what we've done with franchising is made the barrier to entry as low as possible. You can get in with very little capital, get SBA loans and things like that. So trying to get people more into business. I mean, it doesn't have to be a Dirty Dough, but just in general. And then I'm pretty good at posting every day, try to put out good content on social media. So there you can connect LinkedIn, talk mainly about business. Facebook is kind of a mixture, and then Instagram's a little bit more personal life.
Perfect.
But I try to put content out on all of those.
And then what about Dirty Dough?
DirtyDoughCookies.com, but you can also get there through my website. There's a link on there. It'll, inquire about franchising. Maybe there's a picture of a good looking cookie. Click on that.
And Vineyard is the first location, right?
Yep.
Freaking excited because that is where I live. So I cannot wait to be there opening day.
All right. Thanks again for listening to this week's episode of Freedom to Fail. As you guys heard here, Bennett is amazing. Dirty Dough is amazing. Go and try their raspberry Pop-Tart. It will blow your mind. And I mean, I know that I love my own cookies and I talk about them a lot, but there is no way that I can make a cookie that good. It is absolutely amazing. So if you try it out, you will not be disappointed. And if so, then you can just write me a scathing email and I'll just read it and laugh. But anyway, go try them out. Go check out Dirty Dough. Also go check out Crave too. Just go check out all these little companies that are putting up enough of a fight where the big company wants to take them down. So let's go and support them all. And until next week, keep failing your way towards achieving your dreams.